This is a real good article, and I'm going to leave the link for you beneath the video. I urge every California to read this when it comes to Proposition 22. I urge every Uber and Lyft rider, I urge every Uber and Lyft driver to read this. I'm going to read you the entire article. It's fairly long. You can obviously just follow the link and read it in your own downtime, but it really summarizes why Proposition 22 puts tremendous health of Lyft and Uber drivers at risk, big time, because of the sneaky wording in the ballot initiative would leave big gig economy workers in the lurch, right? So the money that they've drummed up, $192 million, which could have gone to child abuse, elderly abuse, senior abuse. No, they put this into this campaign to pay for these glossy big ads to mislead you. I broke this down. These are all lies. Watch one of my other videos. But not to take away from this, this article makes it crystal clear. The only way to go for a California to vote not to buy into their misleading verbiage, right, as they put in their sneaky wording, right? They run these fancy ads and make it look like, oh my God, if you vote against the driver, they'll be out of jobs, and they want you to vote yes on 22. The answer is short and sweet. No, you vote no. The November 2020 election in California features a couple of large health-related ballot initiatives in contrast to Proposition 14 to boost stem cell testing, a Proposition 23 to change laws around kidney dialysis centers, Proposition 22, which was put on the ballot by Uber and Lyft and DoorDash to exempt their drivers from California labor laws, doesn't scream health emergency, but in reality, a yes or no vote in Prop 22 heavily impacts access to affordable health care for hundreds of thousands of people statewide. I also want to mention Californians should never ever forget you bailed Uber and Lyft and these companies that are paying no taxes, they're paying nothing into the state fund. You bailed them out to the tune of $413 million, right, during the pandemic. You bailed all the Uber and Lyft drivers out. That raises your taxes. They're pretty much trying to sell you the same deceptive language through yes on 22 all over again. Prop 22 is a last-ditch effort to stop AB 5 from being implemented. While the ballot measure provides some benefits, it is very much a watered-down version of what the state would require, and it is full of holes. I'm going to give a brief shout-out and mention to my sponsor, ladies and gentlemen, Cover. There it is, Kover. It's a gig protection plan for gig workers. You get a free month. Beneath this video, you'll find a link. Check it out. Only it starts at $7 a month. It's a must for all gig workers. Back to the article. A broken health insurance promise, Prop 22 states that drivers who work more than 25 hours per week of engaged time, for example, with a customer in the car, would receive a health care subsidy amounting to 82% of the average California covered premium each month. There are two major flaws with this. First, in a May 2020 study, 643 drivers in the Bay Area data shows that while nearly a quarter of the gig economy workforce drives more than 30 hours a week, many spend a third or even half of that time waiting for rides. That's what they don't tell you, right? That means that while your app may be on 8 hours a day, it's possible only 5 of those would count toward accrued time for health insurance, right? So you would literally have to drive around the clock in a hamster wheel, burn yourself out, neglect your health to even try and hit the minimums of this health coverage. There's a significant subset of full-time workers who wouldn't be covered even under this ballot initiative, says Ray Fuentes, a fellow with a partnership of working families who has spent the past few months debunking much of Prop 22 claims it will do. The companies come out and say most of the drivers are part-time anyway, but then seem to suggest that those part-timers are going to get some sort of health coverage when in fact they'll never see a cent. Do not fall for yes on 22. Second, even if a driver does reach the engaged time threshold, that would qualify them for healthcare subsidies. There is no agreed upon amount that workers would receive for their covered California health plan. There is no statewide monthly premium. Plans vary heavily based on geographic location. And while the ballot initiative demands that premiums be created, it wouldn't happen until voters pass it. That is problematic. Fuentes says healthcare coverage plans and premiums under covered California vary dramatically by geography. Using a statewide average really does a disservice to urban drivers who are the primary backbone of this company. If you're going to offer a benefit, this is a way to erode it. The potential human impact of these policies is devastating. With subsidies dependent on hours, drivers may be forced to work even when they're not well in order to meet the engaged time quota. Driver Eden Alva, who was profiled in an amicus brief against Uber, knows the pressure all too well. Before the pandemic, I drive knowing that I have to hit the same earnings target each day or I'd start missing my rent payments, he said. I was one illness away from potentially putting my family out on the street. And without sick leave, I was forced to continue driving even when I wasn't 100%. Now in a pandemic, it's inexcusable that workers are left without basic protections. So it's a faulty disability insurance plan. That is what Yes on 22 is. Yes on 22 is a faulty disability insurance plan. Don't fall for it. Vote no. The disability insurance offered through Prop 22 is watered down too. Under California state law, employees can receive a lifetime of disability payments for injuries incurred on the job. Under Prop 22, those payments would be capped at 104 weeks, and that insurance would only be handed out if drivers were not deemed at fault for their disability, the terms of which are unclear. Driving full-time can take a significant toll on one's body. Eduardo, another driver profiled in the brief, who didn't provide his last name out of fear of retaliation, said he had to drive longer hours after pay cuts in 2018. And the sad thing is that Uber does retaliate it. If you speak out against them in the media and they know your first and last name, they deactivate you. That's just how scummy the company is. Vote no on 22. I started developing extreme knee pain that became unbearable, which sent me to the emergency room, he stated. After a 5-day hospital stay and 2 months of physical therapy, I was finally diagnosed with gout, a condition exasperated by prolonged sitting. Throughout this ordeal, I had no access to sick leave for my emergency room stay, no access to paid leave, family leave, or disability insurance during my recovery. This will likely force me to work sooner than my doctor recommended, since I have no other way to provide for my family. Another huge one. There's a lack of support during COVID-19. Californians need to realize that during the pandemic, Uber and Lyft failed to pay $413 million into the safety net. They don't pay any taxes. They have offshore accounts. They don't pay anything into these funds. You bail them out, right? So during the pandemic, Californians literally bailed out all the Uber and Lyft drivers to the tune of $413 million. Finally, companies that rely on gig drivers have done little to support efforts to reduce the spread of COVID-19. Again, it comes down to that tricky little rule around engaged time. During this pandemic, drivers are taking extra steps to make sure we're safe and passengers are safe, said driver Michela, but we seem to be alone in this regard. I was disinfecting my car after every ride, but Uber and Lyft paid me nothing for my time cleaning. This can't possibly be the right incentive if you want to make sure drivers go the extra mile to keep everyone safe. I want Californians to know that through the app, they promised these drivers PPE. Over and over again, they promised us PPE. We never got it. We never got nothing. We, the drivers, had to pay for our own PPE to keep you and us safe. We had to pay for the sanitizers. We had to pay for the masks. These were all big, empty promises, just like this Yes on 22. A lot of blah, 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 empty promises. Judge them by their actions. They don't have any actions. They did not supply PPE. Do not fall for yes on 22. Vote no on 22 California. Now, in an op-ed for the New York Times, CEO Dara Khosrowshahi repeatedly highlights the value of independence for drivers, stating that unlike traditional jobs, drivers have total freedom to choose when and how they drive, so they can fit their work around their life, not the other way around. But he also acknowledges that freedom to work whenever you want comes with a serious drawback. When the worst happens, too often you are on your own. There has historically been little to no paid support for independent workers if they couldn't work. He's guilty of exactly that. If they wanted to take a vacation, or more important, if they got sick. The last statement marks a major shift in acknowledging the failures of Uber's current system. So it's a shame the ballot measure does little to mitigate it. Prop 22 has become the most expensive ballot initiative in state history. As of September 16, more than $192 million has been poured into efforts to basically mislead you in the wording, mislead you in these big fancy brochures. They're lies, ladies and gentlemen, right? Their lobbyists set up their language. They wrote the legislation to fool you. Don't be conned. That combined with deceptive wording on benefits that requires a deeper dive to debunk means it's going to be a tough initiative to beat. For Lyft, Uber, and DoorDash, its failure would be financially devastating. But for the workers who are the backbone of the gig economy, Prop 22's failure is a matter of life and death. I urge you, I ask you to vote no with us on Proposition 22. You and I know California, you have $192 million, right? Big Tobacco did this in 2006. Pharmaceutical companies have done this. Big Oil has poured over $100 million into initiatives to con you, to fool you, right? They're not paying into the system. You don't have to support big pharma, big tobacco, big oil, and big greedy gig companies, right? What's important here, if you have $192 million, this is where I would like it to be spent, CEO Dara Khosrowshahi. Senior abuse, combating racism, combating white supremacy, combating child abuse, combating animal abuse. That is where you could put your money. Put your money where your mouth is. Spend $190 million on the causes that are important. Don't spend them on misleading legislation. Don't spend them on misleading propositions to con the average Californian, trying to lead them to believe that you are being saints towards the drivers. You're being nothing but the opposite. California, please, as a driver, I urge you, do not fall for these cheap tricks. Do not fall for the sneaky wording. Vote no on 22. God bless, be safe, and take care of your families.